Welcome to the masterclass to everyone. Today's topic is innovation and future of the law. I'm excited to be running this session and I hope that everyone will find it really useful. So now just to get started with the bulk of the masterclass, I'm just going to start by asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with you, Grace. Could you just give a quick intro to yourself and your firm?
Yeah, so my name is Grace Pinault. I'm a 3PQ solicitor at Dentons. I work in planning law, and I did my training contract at Dentons.
Fantastic. Elin?
Yes. Hi, my name is Elin Brannstrom. I am an associate at White and Case. I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden. So I have a slightly different background. I did not do a UK training per se, so I'm qualified to practice in Sweden. However, I have been working with international M&A transactions for about 8 years. And last summer, I was temporarily seconded to White and Case's global AI and innovation team. So I'm currently not practicing law, but working internally for the firm with questions around AI and innovation and change and adoption. So the topics of today's discussion. We're happy to be here.
Perfect, thank you. That leads us really nicely into the first question, Ellen. Could you give me, I guess, a bit of an intro? What would you say innovation means to you, and what's your team's vision?
Sure, no, I'm happy to do so. So we're a global AI and innovation team. We've only been around for about a year. So when I started the process to do this internal secondment, there wasn't much of a team in place. So everyone has sort of been recruited or pulled in from different parts of White and Case in the last 12 months. So it's a very new team, and our vision is really to promote an innovation mindset for all lawyers, because innovation is something, meaningful innovation, I should say. It's not something that an isolated innovation team can do for the firm, for the lawyers. It's something that every lawyer has to work on within their practice, in their day-to-day and client work. So a lot of what we're trying to achieve is to promote that challenger mindset, that curiosity, and the willingness to try new things, and just that constant question of, is there a better way to do this? Is there a faster, more efficient, improved quality? Is there anything we can do to make this service even better than it is today? That's, I guess, the vision.
Thank you. I think I really like the idea of innovation, kind of questioning everything and thinking about how can we do this differently, but kind of sitting at the core of what innovation is. I guess building on that, Grace, obviously the idea of what innovation is has evolved quite dramatically over the last few years. How would you say you've seen innovation sort of change as a topic or of conversation?
Well, it's definitely changed quite a bit because it feels like generally in the sector, when we're talking about innovation, a lot of people are talking about AI because it's so disruptive. I think partly because our sector was really slow to actually adopt automation tools, and actually a lot of just general tech that when AI came on board and kind of large language models became quite mainstream, it's quite disruptive. And I think that's really dominating the conversation now. At Dentons, we were early adopters of large language models. We had the first client secure ChatGPT tool. So in kind of like our idea of how the definition of innovation has changed, it hasn't really changed much. It's matured. So we're not approaching innovation just for disruption's sake. We're really outcome led. So we look to deploy innovation and specific digital transformation projects, specifically when we can improve our delivery to clients, if we can improve consistency, if we can manage risk a little bit better or achieve better client outcomes. So that's kind of like what we're kind of focused on now, is more the conclusions and the outputs rather than like focusing just on the process.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And sticking with you on this next one, Grace, what would you say are the main three factors that are impacting the way law firms operate?
So the first one that I'd say is probably ability to adopt tech, not deploy. So when we're thinking about deployment, we're thinking about like what is the IT backend that would allow like a new tool to be onboarded. So the governance structures and things like that. Adoption, though, is about how do you get the tool in use. And it's only through use that you can start assessing whether your business case for onboarding that tool in the first place was worthwhile. You could have the shiniest, most expensive tech, but if no one's using it, it's not going to crystallize value for your clients. It's not actually going to deliver a tangible outcome for the business. So there's quite a lot of like cultural points that feed into that. The second point I would say is probably integrating AI into a process. So AI is in large language models provide a great opportunity to generate like general efficiency gains. When you can start integrating tech and AI into a particular process and you change the way that you're pitching work, you're quoting, pricing for it, how you're going to deliver it, that's actually when it becomes business as usual. It's fully integrated into a business. And so when you have that, I think that really changes the way that we actually work. And then the last factor that I'd flag is probably governance. So being able to have a really good idea in terms of like what's appropriate, what's not, how we're going to use AI, how are we going to supervise others that are using AI, how do we make sure that the backend is completely airtight and client secure, that we're not going to breach any of our professional conduct rules or data privacy rules. That's an absolutely fundamental thing that you can't substitute.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And I think covers a lot of the key bases there. In terms of, and I think this is a question that is very commonly asked, Ellen, as AI is kind of adopted, how does that affect the role of the lawyer?
I think that we will see lawyers moving into more of a supervisor role earlier on in their careers. When I started, you would typically expect to go at least 3 years or so before actually supervising someone else. So you weren't expected to like delegate anything until you had a couple of years of experience under the belt. So it was this, you have this period of like, first you need to learn how to do it. So you know what good looks like. And then when you know what good looks like, you start delegating and supervise others and teach them how to do it. I think what we're going to see now is that more and more and earlier on in our careers, we will all become supervisors of AI. So AI will do a lot of the tasks that was previously done by armies of junior lawyers. And that means that the junior lawyers will, in turn, need to be supervising the AI output the same way that mid-level seniors and partners have previously been supervising them. And that requires a lot of like critical thinking and analysis, which I think has always been important, but it will be even more important going forward. Because the trick with these large language models, and I'm sure everyone here, you're using it on a daily basis, majority of you will know that it typically sounds very good, sounds very confident. So it's easy to just take the output at face value, but where we as lawyers will really be able to add value to our clients going forward, I think, is by applying that critical thinking of this sounds good, but is it right? Is there something else? Is there something missing that wasn't picked up by this model? In terms of what we're spending our time on, I think we'll spend less time on drafting and summarizing long documents. And also, if we go beyond the generative AI, I also think that we will probably start automating a lot more. So the sort of mindless document creation, copy pasting, and just flushing out documents, I think we'll spend significantly less time doing that going forward. But the challenge is also, of course, like how do we learn what good looks like if we don't have those years of experience? So how do we get our lawyers to come up to speed and become good supervisors of AI early on in their careers with much less experience than, for example, I had when I was growing up as a junior lawyer?
Thank you. That's really interesting, and also quite an interesting challenge raised. I hadn't really thought about it like that in terms of almost taking on a more manager role at an early stage, because you are kind of overseeing an AI almost like it's a junior colleague. That's a really interesting way to look at it. I think that almost brings on to another question I guess when you're talking about efficiencies around billing practices, which is a question I think that has been quite commonly discussed as well, but very important to talk about. How would you say we can expect AI to impact billing practices, or what would you say are the main kind of discussion points around that?
This is one for me too.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, sure. It's a difficult one because everyone is currently speaking about the death of the billable hour and like we will no longer be able to charge by the hour, et cetera, et cetera. I've heard that before and I've been around for quite some time and it feels like people have been saying that for a long time and so far nothing has changed much. We are seeing and have seen for a couple of years now that there is a slight increase in alternative fee arrangements, like fixed fee arrangements, etc. But it's not really taking over, and we're not yet seeing a big shift. It's a bit tricky because most people agree, if they're pressed on the matter, they agree that time spent does not equal value. So everyone, when they sort of think about it, agrees that how much time I spend on a task is not a good proxy for the value that work brings. And if they could get the same work done faster, that might actually be more valuable to them. So from that perspective, we should be charging more and not less now that we can use AI to get the work done quicker. That's not how most of our clients see it. They are expecting us to deliver significant cost savings now that we can do the job faster, which is a bit contrary to this view of like, oh, time is not value. The tricky part here is, I think, if we can all agree that time spent is not a good proxy for value delivered, what is a good proxy for value delivered? Because we are not delivering a standardized service. Very, very few components of the services that we are delivered are completely standardized in the sense that this is a product and the client X, client Y, and client Z gets the same product with a different company name. That's just not how the legal industry works. So that makes it really difficult to price as well. And until and unless we come up with a really good proxy for value, I think we are going to see the billable hours survive for at least the foreseeable future.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Grace, do you have anything, I guess, to add on that in terms of specifically how AI has impacted clients and expectations?
I think clients are generally expecting that, yes, you're going to be using AI. You're going to try to get the outcome as efficiently as you can. I think that what becomes apparent is, you've got a lot of AI and tech tools out there, but really things like large language models, they might have some commercial awareness, but they can't step into the shoes and actually say, well, across 100 deals of this similar type, this is actually what was agreed by reservation fee. These are the kind of terminations provisions that you can expect. So the most valuable thing that a law firm has is actually its intellectual property. It's everything that's saved down in the filing systems. When you can start drawing from that and your advice isn't just about, we're going to do X, it's, you're positioning yourself in a way that you can say, my commercial expertise across, hundreds of deals, or this data set that I have across, knowledge of this particular sector, that's really what's going to set you apart. Clients have always kind of expected some commercial awareness, but I think that focus has become more acute, particularly because everyone's now driving an efficiency game as fast as they can. So really the best way that you can distinguish yourself is by just setting apart the type of advice that you're giving, saying, I'm providing something different.
That's great. That's really interesting. I guess focusing on the quality of advice. I guess in terms of instead of the speed, which is I think quite similar to what Elin was saying around the quantifying what is value, which is already interesting questions. I think another key question that's raised in terms of AI and how that impacts the client relationship. Grace, could you tell me a bit about, I guess, how law firms approach balancing technology with client trust and confidentiality?
So I think with this, it's never client trust and confidentiality always comes first, right? There's no sacrificing this for the purpose of any gain. So really, it's on the back end in our governance structure, and it's about building a culture. So first, it's kind of looking at digital transformation in terms of its entire life cycle. So not just looking at deploying a tool and making sure that it's secure and there's going to be no data breach. It's really about horizon scanning. So really early on, are you identifying the issues which tech can solve? Are you keeping an eye out on the horizon for new tech that is on there that could present a really great opportunity to solve the challenges that you've identified? And then through that, working through and actually embedding it, where you're thinking, okay, well, this tool, we're not going to onboard it just because it's new. It's going to solve this particular issue. How do we embed this within the business, within a process? How do we make sure it's adopted so that we actually make sure that we can deliver that specific outcome? So it's about thinking about deployment and adoption all the way through from start to finish. If you do that, then when you approach your tech teams and you say, okay, well, this is what we're going to use it for, you have a really crystallized use case, and it becomes much easier to control the risks.
Thank you. And Ellen, I guess as firms continue to, look at taking on AI, what would you say is the best way to approach investing in AI? And is there specific areas firms should look in investing?
I think Grace touched upon this a couple of minutes ago, that it's really not about getting the new shiny tools. And more people are starting to realize that you can buy all the tools, but unless your people know how to use them and actually will use them in their live matters, it's just not going to matter at all. And what I feel like I've been seeing recently is that more and more firms are realizing that and how important the people piece is. So investing in a really expensive and nice and shiny tool with all the functionalities is worth less unless you also invest as much, if not more, money, time, incentives on getting people to actually start using and learning how to use and apply these tools in their workflows. So I think that's something that I would really mention, that I think there needs to be a part of the investment decision needs to take into account the investment needed in the people part. Otherwise, you're just not going to see any return on that investment. I think also a strategic approach to the tech portfolio. So a little bit of what I touched upon when I spoke about like our team's vision is really to get that collaboration with the practicing lawyers. So start with the problem, start with a pain point. And then, like Braid said as well, horizon scanning. Okay, we've identified a problem. What could solve that? Is it a tax solution? It might not be a tax solution. Maybe it's a second PA or a paralegal. That's the solution. But just starting with a problem also gives you typically more return on investment and a more conscious approach, rather than going the other way around, seeing a fancy tech solution, buying it, and then trying to figure out where I should apply it. So yeah, twofold. Invest in the people and think strategically about the tech portfolio and start with the problems and not the solutions.
Amazing, thank you. I also was wondering, I guess, maybe Grace, you could provide some insight on this in terms of actually encouraging implementation and trying to build a culture of innovation. How does a firm kind of approach doing that?
I think the best way to do it is from the ground up. So when you're leading digital transformation, you can, as a supervisor or someone who's in charge of a practice, say, you're only going to use this tool, nothing else. It rarely works well because when you're onboarding new tech, it's only until it starts being used at scale that you start to see anything that's unanticipated or like, oh, this doesn't quite work as well as we thought. We can't embed it in a process. We can't rely on it, however it may be. So it's really about people talking about it and having open conversations about what they're using it for, what it works well with. And when you kind of have that conversation where people feel safe that they can speak up and talk about things, then you can actually start proposing disruption. Particularly at Dentons, something that is quite successful if you're looking to like change a process is actually kind of like frame it within a business case. So if you say, well, we could actually start approaching this work if we did it slightly differently by doing X, Y, and Z. We could use this tool to do it. I've already done it twice and it's saved about this amount of time to do it. We should actually pilot that. So it's about kind of not necessarily jumping in with both feet and doing things at scale, but it's actually just making sure that everyone is contributing to the innovation strategy as much as they want to, and then allowing them opportunities to go out and like pilot it. And then over time, things like that actually just grow organically within the business.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think making sure that people slowly sort of start to take on tools is really important. And is much better than, I guess, doing it from the top down. I think another area I'd really like to touch on is, I guess, looking at how each individual might start to take on AI tools. How do trainees at your firm sort of get involved in innovation? And I think this would be something to be interesting to hear from both of you on, maybe starting with you, Grace. How does the firm approach getting trainees involved, and are they expected to have much background knowledge?
Yeah, well, I definitely think there's a pretty, strong expectation that you have good, AI and tech exposure. So that's you could be fantastic in AI, but actually, if you don't know like basic MS Office and things like that, it's going to affect you. And I think general advice to anybody who's looking to do an internship or a vacation scheme somewhere, just make sure you've mastered those tools so that, when you're doing a contract, you can actually use the full tools that are available in that, in that product. But specifically for trainees looking to get involved in innovation, Dentons has office hours, so you can actually approach AI champions and say, "Oh, well, I'm thinking about doing this. This is a process that I think I would like to change." There's a wide variety of tools that are available. Some of them are quite expensive as well. So as a trainee, all you need to do is raise your hand and say, like, "Oh, I'd really like to experiment with this tool and use it within my practice," and they will just allow you the access. So we very much have like an open door, and it's about just having a conversation saying, well, one, I might just like to train myself up on this tool for no other reason, like I just want to do it. Or two, like I want to experiment and change a process, and then you just crack on and have a go. So it's very much driven by your particular desire to experiment with innovation.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And I think it's also nice to hear about, I guess, it's the importance of being proactive with that as well, and thinking of business cases or just reasons you might want to use a tool. Ellen, do you have anything to add in terms of how do trainees get involved with AI at your firm?
Looking at my notes here, and they're quite similar. So on the first question on like what background knowledge are we expecting, I had the exact same thing as Grace just mentioned. Like the best thing you can do is get really, really, really good at like Microsoft Word, Outlook, Excel if you have time for some extracurricular activities, but definitely Microsoft Word and Outlook, because that's going to help you so much. And to my point earlier that the shiniest tools are worth nothing if they're just on the shelf. Like there are so many problems that people come to me with now, like, oh, I don't know how to solve this. And I show them a function in Word that has been there for probably the last 2 decades and no one knew about it. And they think we need to go buy some fancy tech solution to solve that. Whereas this is something that was there all along. They just didn't know about it. So and this is something I typically tell my juniors as well, like when they first come through the doors and they have maybe couple of slow weeks before they get involved in projects. I always tell them to like just watch as many like YouTube tutorials and e-learning trainings as you possibly can on the functions of Microsoft Word and Outlook. But other than that, we don't really expect a lot of tech expertise. We expect you to be curious and have a drive to learn more and actually like take charge, again, to Grace's point, take charge of your own learning curve. Don't expect to be fed the information, but go out and look for it. I can promise you that it's there. At White & Case, we have a very, very robust training program with like mandatory training, and then there's optional training as well. Don't skip out on the optional trainings. Don't multitask. I mean, take notes. Try to think and process the information that you get. And again, to Grace's point, try to be that person who actually takes the time to attend the trainings, the demos, the workshop, read the newsletter, browse the internet, figure out the tools, get access to them, play around with them, so that you become the go-to person in your team that can actually either raise your hand and say, hey, I tried this tool, this might fit in this workflow, why don't we use that? Or other people in your team will appreciate you, like partners and seniors will really appreciate you if they feel like they can come to you and ask, do you think that there is a tech tool that can help you here? And you will be such an appreciated member of the team if you can say, oh, yes, you know what? 3 weeks ago, I was in a pilot for tool X. Let me talk to someone I know in the tech team, and maybe we can get it on this matter. Like, that is such a valuable asset for any senior lawyer to have on the team.
Perfect, thank you. There was actually a question in the Q&A which said, when junior lawyers use generative AI well, what are they doing? And I guess based on that answer, it seems kind of almost being proactive and getting really getting to grips with the tools that you currently have before you sort of start to look out to the extra tech you could get. But I don't know if there's anything extra that either of you would give as advice as answer to that question.
And what was the question? How junior lawyers can use generative AI?
It was basically saying when a junior lawyer uses generative AI really well, what are they doing differently from perhaps the standard junior?
Okay. For me, it really what really stands out is the person who uses the Gen AI tool as a tool and not a replacement for their own thought process. Like, I was running this workshop a couple of weeks ago where I basically I divided the people, group of lawyers. I divided them into groups. Each group received like a fake client email and some template docs. And the task was just like delivered to the client on their ask. And you could really see the difference between some teams just, copy pasted the email into our AI tool, uploaded all the template documents they got into the AI tool, then press play. Whereas other teams sort of started reading the client email and started picking apart the email. Okay, what are they really asking for? Okay, they said this, but how do we think they want it? We think they want it in an email? Do they want a memo? What do we think this is for? How do I think they want it? Like, started thinking about what they're actually delivering, and then started prompting the AI tool for that instead of just copy pasting the email. And those teams, they got way better results, maybe unsurprisingly. So I think that little extra step of not just simply copy pasting stuff back and forth, but really applying your own analysis and your thought process is what's going to set you apart. Both will use AI, but one will use it as a tool and one will use it as a replacement.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great answer. Pretty much steals mine, because I was going to say that you should, like, someone who uses generative AI really well doesn't use generative AI to make decisions. They've already decided. So they know what their outcome is. They know what their advice is. They're not using generative AI to think for them. A junior lawyer who's using generative AI just means that they're capturing the efficiencies that they need to. So the best way to do that is to invest in prompt engineering as a skill. So there's lots of AI tools out there. Go and use different large language models so you can see how different and varied they are. But also start experimenting with engineering prompts, so that instead of just saying like, oh, draft me a blog on X, you're saying, draft me a blog on X. It needs to answer questions A, B, and C. The answers to that are 1, 2, and 3 because, X, Y, and Z. And then suddenly you get an outrageously good output. And if you add additional, elements to that prompt where you're talking about like what the audience should be, what the length should be, you just get like a really great quality output. And then you still are in the driver's seat to actually go and refine that output because it's your name on it, right? So someone who's really, really good at generative AI will not just say, oh, that's like a really great blog. I'm really pleased with that. It took me 2 minutes to do. They will actually then spend another hour polishing it. And then when a supervisor looks at it, it's a fantastic output. Probably took a fifth of the time that was needed. That to me is just what we should be achieving. That is like a fantastic outcome. And if you start repeating that and you do that reliably, you're going to stand out.
Fantastic, thank you. I think that point about prompting is definitely so interesting, and as you kind of evolve your prompts and work out what elements are really key to include to make this work and make this be the output that I really want, that's kind of a great learning experience. Fantastic. And now moving on to my sort of next section of questioning, which is around kind of opportunities and challenges around AI, which is quite a broad topic. And we'll start with quite a broad question, which is, what are, would you say, the biggest opportunities that AI is presenting for the legal market? Starting with you, Grace.
Well, I think AI was definitely going to change the legal market in that we talked about driving toward efficiency. We've talked about kind of like more focus on commerciality in our advice. I think specifically there's a great opportunity for junior professionals because as someone who, I'm young in my career and I've seen the deployment of large language models and kind of seen these get embedded in processes. I think as AI starts to, it's gotten better and better year on year, it actually starts removing a lot of the grunt work from junior professionals. So I think from a role standpoint, from actual work and day to day, the job only gets better year on year. I think that's a particular opportunity because it's really changing fundamentally the way that junior lawyers are actually getting their early experience in the firm. Where before, if you look at like movies in the 90s of a lawyer, they might have boxes of documents and they're going through and they're trying to find that one piece of evidence. Those days are gone, right? That doesn't happen anymore. Like those boxes get sent to a team, they get scanned, they get digitized, they get machine readable. Then you can stick it into an AI and actually like start interrogating that as a data set. So like the way that we're changing is very different. You're no longer like a truffle pig searching around for like a scrap of evidence because clients are not going to pay for that. So the work is a lot more sophisticated from a very junior end now. And I think from a legal profession, that's great because you're not then just grinding away on just tasks that don't really have like intellectual value behind them.
Thank you. And Elin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I think efficiency, of course, is a big point, and getting to better quality faster. I sincerely hope that I will never have to proofread and correct spelling and grammar errors in a DD report ever again, because that's something that used to annoy me so much. And things like that just improve the quality and get to that stellar quality in the first instance, rather than in perhaps the third or fourth iteration of proofreading, things like that. Then I guess it also depends on what you put in the bucket of AI. Right now, we're talking a lot about generative AI and large language models, but depending on how you define AI, you could also start including things like automation, the sort of old school machine learning models. And I think that some of those, like other AI technologies, might be slightly underutilized right now because generative AI is so hot. Personally, I think there's a lot of opportunity in like document automation that is currently slightly neglected. So I hope that that's going to have a little upswing once the generative AI hype has cooled down a little bit. It's a different technology and it has its pros and cons compared to generative AI, but that's really something if we want to include that in the sort of opportunities of AI and tech more generally, I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well. And historically, I think it's been underutilized because of a lack of incentives to really invest time in setting it up, because it's the type of thing that it requires an investment in time up front, and then you'll sort of reap the benefits down the line. But the way, again, our compensation mechanisms and our billing arrangements don't really incentivize us to do that, to invest that time up front and then sort of reap the benefits later on. So, another thing I have was if we can figure out the sort of data privacy and compliance issues that come with this, I really think that the day where we can have agentic AI to like run our calendars for us, schedule meetings with clients, send invites, produce agendas and action items and get those circulated, get like emails prioritized and sorted in the right folder, reminders sent when needed, I think that is going to be a game changer. We're not there yet, though. But.
Definitely, I think that will have a big impact. And I guess on the flip side of that, thinking about the challenges as well, I guess you've sort of touched on some of them, Ellen, in the sense of there are certain areas that you think could have more focus, but the practices aren't necessarily set up in a way to incentivize that. But would you say there are any other kind of big challenges that perhaps AI is bringing?
I think we've touched on most of them. I think the big barrier right now is the adoption piece and the people piece. Like that's the big barrier to really seeing this hockey stick efficiency and efficiency gains coming up. So the technology is advanced enough. We really just need the people to catch up by now. In terms of risks of actually using the technology, I think that sort of complacency or laziness, if you will, that comes with it being so easy to just like not apply your own thought process and let someone else do the thinking. I'm a bit concerned that, especially when you're short on time and you have 1,000 things to do at the same time, it might be 4 a.m. and you just want to go home and go to bed. I am a bit concerned that will have an impact on our skills development and how we develop as lawyers. So it's something that we really need to think about and think through when it comes to our training programs and how we staff matters and things like that. But on the other hand, we can work faster, so maybe we don't have to be here at 2 a.m, really tired and not really having the headspace to apply our own analysis to matters.
That's interesting to think about, definitely. And I guess, Grace, in terms of those challenges and those risks that Ellen's mentioned, how would you say that firms can look to manage the risks that are brought by AI?
So we've talked about governance a bit, and I think that's the main topic. And it's about thinking about that digital transformation piece from start to finish. So if you're bringing in a new tool, what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve? Like, what are you trying to fix? Just saying like, oh, we're promoting general efficiency isn't quite going to work, because then mitigating the risks that could arise from people misusing it is going to be endless. It's very hard. Not to say that you shouldn't, deploy kind of general efficiency tools, but it is worthwhile to kind of define the need. And that way, when you're starting to work through and you start looking at adoption, you can then take a really good objective view about whether it's successful. So part of the risks with tech and AI is actually making sure that you can assess how well it's performing. Part of that is adoption, right? So if no one's using it, it's pretty hard to say whether that tool is fit for purpose or not. If everyone's using it and they're struggling with it, then really clearly oh, that's not a great tool for this. I think when it comes to the risks, it's making sure that you have a good governance structure. Everyone is trained up on the principles of what responsible tech usage looks like. They understand the technology well enough to understand what its limitations are. It's also, ensuring that in a process where we're using AI and we're augmenting our advice or we're augmenting our work, there's a human in the loop. So someone's at one point is responsible for making sure that output is reliable, that they put their name behind it. So there's a lot of different ways to manage the risks. It really depends on what they're specifically trying to manage. Something that I would flag as well that isn't, I think, talked about quite widely is making sure you're using the right tool for the right job. I think I agree that automation is probably underutilized within our sector. Sometimes people, or I see firms that are kind of using AI use cases when actually automation would be far more appropriate and actually much more reliable. And it would be easier to embed in a process, because automation isn't interpreting data to then make an output. It's just following a really strict set of rules. So it's really reliable. It's very consistent. It's kind of like having that knowledge of what should I actually use for this particular problem that will help you lead to better outcomes. And if you solve that piece first, then the risks that you're mitigating are much more controlled and much more limited. So it's kind of thinking about it from start to finish, really.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And Now moving on, I can see as you were speaking, quite a few audience questions have come through, and I'm keen to spend some time on those as well. One that's just popped up, which was actually quite similar to the question I was going to ask next, which was, what practice areas do you think will have the fastest change over the next few years because of technology? I don't know if either of you have any thoughts on that.
Well, my practice area. Oh, go ahead. Do you want to go first?
No, go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say I don't really know, so.
So I work in planning and development law, and part of that is actually public and administration law. So I work with local authorities that grant development consents, that's central government, local government, and also developers. Something that we're looking at is actually, as part of a planning application process, consultation responses that come in from residents. And there's now AI companies that you can pay, and they will write an AI generated objection letter and submit this to a planning officer. So under law, in English law, there's requirements about how a decision maker who's going to grant planning consent has to have due regard to those consultation responses. So the swell in AI and these tech tools are actually affecting like how the interpretation of case law is happening. Because one, should you have due regard to something that's AI generated? Two, can you use AI to actually fulfill your statutory duties as a decision maker? So this is something that's actually changing my area of law day to day. There's this general trend in digitization and planning and trying to chase efficiencies, and AI is definitely going to change case law in this area. Secondly, I do a lot of work in natural capital. So natural capital that will work as kind of development offsets, super niche. I think if you're starting to use tech in your legal practice where you can start harnessing and scrape data from the work that you're doing, that's a competitive edge. I think if you're working in a niche practice area where there's not a lot of information online and it's blue water, start approaching the documents that you see and the documents that you're working on like data points. Start scraping information that's worthwhile. So like what was agreed in the indemnity? Like when were these payments actually triggered? Start noting them down so that when you continue to advise clients in the future, you've got empirical data behind you. So you're not just advising clients saying, this is a good idea. It's saying across all the deals that I've seen and this many, these are the kind of things that you could seek. So it's just providing like a really enhanced kind of advice that's backed by, transactions that are happening with their competitors.
Thank you. Did you have anything else to add, Ellen?
Not really. I think all practice areas are going to change to some extent. But yeah, difficult to say which would change more or less. I did want to pick up on something Grace said about the data, because I think we probably haven't spent enough of time speaking about that. This is something that the rise of these large language models actually unlocks a lot for lawyers that hasn't previously been possible, because we have typically not have very structured data. Our data has been masses and tons of documents of text, and that has been really difficult for computers to make sense of historically, compared to like Excel spreadsheets and numbers, which is for a while now been relatively easy for computers to make sense of and actually extract valuable knowledge from. And now with these large language models, we're currently seeing a shift where we can actually make sense and extract value from even data sets that are just tons and tons of documents. There is the challenge, though, that you can't really just sprinkle some AI on top of your entire document management system, because then you don't really know what's going to turn up. So there is an exercise, I think, to be made, to Grace's point, about curating your data and collecting like quality stamp data sets that you can then apply AI to. But I agree that will, if we manage to do that as lawyers, we will have a very, very good competitive edge.
Thank you. Another question I can see that's come in is more from kind of the aspiring lawyer perspective, which actually aligns with one of the questions I had written down on my sheet as well, which is in terms of skills and experience, what kind of skills and experience should an aspiring lawyer develop if they are perhaps looking to apply for a firm that is adopting AI or using AI quite as one of their kind of key developments? What skills are kind of necessary, I guess, for a future lawyer now?
I think we've touched upon most of these points, but let's run them again because they're important. Critical thinking and a commercial mindset. I think that's extremely important. First of all, understanding why. Like, why is my firm doing X, Y, Z? But also, more importantly, why is the client doing X, Y, Z? Because that will really help you tailor the advice and tailor the processes to what is important to the client, not just the way it's always been done. And then that critical thinking piece, to not take things at face value and really be that, have that question mark in your head. This is not new, by the way. It's always been there as really important skills, but maybe more important than ever now. I think the second point I usually raise with law students is the ability to give like clear and actionable advice. So that process of like understanding a problem or an issue, formulating the problem, solving it, or at least trying to solve it, come up with one or more solutions, weigh some pros and cons against each other, form an opinion and a recommendation, and articulate that. That whole process, again, has always been very important, but I think now more than ever, it's going to be extremely important, because that's a process where we can really add value as humans. I have this example this is again, like before the age of AI, but just the difference between, like in a due diligence exercise, and we discovered that the company in question is not GDPR compliant. So you could either write in the recommendation, ensure GDPR compliance, but will the client know what to do with that information? Okay, the issue is we're not compliant. The solution is get compliant. It doesn't really tell you what you need to do. Compare that to, okay, we have identified these 3 things. This is how you fix it. This is the order in which they should be prioritized, because this issue is more important or could result in a bigger impact for your business, etc. So that sort of ties into the commercial mindset, I guess, but just the ability to take that process from analyzing the problem to giving recommendations and advice in a clear and unambiguous way.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Grace?
Yeah, I completely agree, actually, with everything. The one thing that I would add is kind of highlighting a couple. There are some analog skills that I think you should just develop. We can talk about, massive changes in tech and AI. There's like a handful of skills that you should just, you should just nail. You should be very, very good at. The first is actually being really good at calling people and saying, okay, well, hi, I'm Grace Pinault. I'm an associate at Dentons. I'm calling you in respect of this matter at 123 Main Street. I'd like to understand exactly when your signatories are going to sign this agreement, blah, 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 blah. Because everyone just wants to send emails, and, we're not used to like calling our friends up on the phone regularly. But if you can start using that, it's a very effective way to actually progress transactional work. Getting on the phone and talking to people can also just give you a tone that you're not going to get over email. So you can kind of test the waters and see what's going on. Really good phone skills. Just do it so often that you're so confident with it that you never get any anxiety when you're calling someone, or if you need to pick up the phone and respond, you can keep your cool. So I think something like that is quite important. The second thing that I'd flag is note-taking skills. That's an analog thing, which surprisingly with, client expectations, you'd be very surprised, but some clients are not okay with having an AI bot in a Teams or a Zoom call that's taking notes. So yeah, you got to be good at taking notes so you can understand what the actions are. If you're a junior professional and you're in a meeting, you have to provide value, right? So if you're the one that's taking notes and holding the pen and you are really confident that you've gotten all the action points, that's a very good outcome. Very pleased with that. Those are 2 things that I'd really just kind of recommend, that no matter what happens in tech and AI, you got to know good note taking and good phone skills will never go out of fashion.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The note taking part, I think I see that all the time. And even if it's not in a formal meeting, like you go into a senior's office and they're giving you instructions, and I say this all the time, and you think that you're going to remember it all. Then you walk out of the office and immediately go, oh, wait, what was that they said about that thing? And there's nothing that annoys a senior associate or a partner more than having to run through the whole thing again because you didn't take note. So yeah, or going back, doing the thing, and you deliver only half of what you were initially told to deliver because you forgot to take note of the second part. So yeah, note taking, good call, Bryce. Totally agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good one. And one maybe if we hadn't thought of, especially, as the AI note-taking tool is becoming more popular, but obviously lots of clients might not want that. Perfect, thank you. Another question I've got here is about, I guess, how law firms stay competitive. Obviously, there's quite a evolving landscape, and I think especially in the context of alternative service providers as well, how do law firms, I guess, in this landscape remain competitive when everyone is in some shape or form, I guess, investing in AI? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I'd be happy to take this one. Well, at the start.
Yeah, go ahead, Grace. Thanks.
So an alternative legal service provider is like a company that's providing usually a really specific solution in legal. They tend to have their own tech in-house. So if you think about like e-discovery, so let's say you have a big contentious case, you've got like gigs and gigs of data that needs to be reviewed. You can give it to an e-discovery provider and they will trawl through that information. So you can say, look, I want to understand what was happening with this employee on this particular day, or I want to know what the lease was. I want to understand all the correspondence in respect of X. The e-discovery provider can use, they've got like their own in-house models that they've trained up that are kind of like traditional AI machine learning tools. And they would go in and process that information, provide an answer. And a couple years ago, law firms were using alternative legal service providers to like outsource specific tasks. Some general counsel in main firms were also kind of approaching alternative ALSs, to provide a specific need. And now, because AI use is so good, and these companies have such a strong use case for investing those tools in-house, it's almost like in competition, really, because a general counsel can approach an ALS to actually provide like the scope of services that they can provide now are actually much larger. There's a lot more competition in that market. So there's a lot of off-the-shelf products that are kind of available for a general counsel at a company that instead of going to a law firm, they can go to that tech provider specifically and say, I want you to review all my leases and produce a report. There might be some reasons why an in-house lawyer might not do that. They might want to particularly rely on a law firm so that they know that person is professionally regulated, and then there's insurance behind that advice. So I know what I'm getting is quality and I can rely on it versus the risk sitting in-house with the company. But there is more competition and it's a changing landscape because there's so much tech that's constantly being developed and funded in-house.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts, Ellen? That kind of covers it.
Maybe just to add to that, I think there is, or from my experience in working with a lot of large cross-border M&A transactions, there are certainly cases where like the client's in-house department could go to a number of different service providers and source all the services, but then there would be a big sort of burden of work placed on them to collate the input, to coordinate all of the service providers. And a lot of what we do and the value that we add in a big M&A transaction is just that sort of project manager role, so that the client, they can speak to me. They know that I will solve the problem. And then if I solve it with myself, my associates, or another, like a subcontractor that is an alternative legal service provider, they sort of don't care because they expect the job to be delivered. So there's also that aspect, sort of like if you're building a house, like sure, you can go get the cheapest electrician and the cheapest carpenter and the cheapest, floor person, or you could go to one person, like build me a house. I want the house built. They will both get you there, and getting to one person, if you go to the one person, that will likely be more expensive because they will charge for their work and just holding the whole piece together. But there's something to say for that. That work is quite valuable in my experience, and a lot of in-house departments value that a lot. So the landscape is shifting, but I don't think that the competition is such that our entire business model is going to fail, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. That's fantastic to hear more about. I guess to round off today, in terms of keeping up to date with all of these opportunities, and I guess also the challenges that are coming with the evolving landscape, do either of you have any advice on, I guess, where students can go next in terms of how they can keep up to date with issues and build their skills?
I mean, if you join a firm, they are going to have trainings and newsletters, etc. So I think that's a good way to start. And we have spoken a lot about like AI and all of that, but ultimately, in my experience, what really sets good associates apart is that commercial mindset. So if I would recommend like one news source, it's basically, I don't know, Financial Times or those kind of newspapers. Start reading the boring business newspapers because that is going to advance your career much more than knowing the most recent tech.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The tech is what gets you there, but remember, we've talked about it doesn't make decisions for you. It has some commercial awareness, but it's not going to do the hard lifting for you. You need to bring that to the table. So, the best thing that I could probably say is for a junior aspiring lawyer is treat this as an investment in yourself. So anytime that you spend reading the Financial Times or learning more about commercial markets or something that's new in a sector, you're investing in yourself. It doesn't matter what firm you're working for or where you go in your life. That's an investment in yourself. No one can take away that knowledge from you. So it's definitely something where work on the skills. Definitely, try to get up to date on that and kind of improve yourself. But just always remember that the knowledge and the commerciality that you bring and that curiosity is really what's going to get you noticed. It's not really the tech and AI.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's really great closing advice. And I think that is all we have time for today. So thank you both for taking part in our panel and for the audience for joining us. We hope that everyone found the session really informative. I think we've covered a really interesting range of things and hopefully you've got some great key takeaways. I'm just going to finish off with a poll about your key takeaways. What would you say you've learned the most about today? It's about how firms are innovating practice, how legal tech impacts client relationships, about trainees, or the benefits of challenges of legal tech. While you're voting on that, I just want to have a few reminders. Firstly, we'll be sending out a link containing the recorded session, and a survey will also be popping up once the masterclass has ended. So please do fill that in. It's really useful to hear what you enjoyed today, and if there's any other topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Okay, I can see that quite a few people have answered the poll, so I'm just going to end that and share the results. Looks like lots of people have said that benefits and challenges with legal tech has been a key takeaway, as well as how firms are innovating their legal practice, which is really fantastic to see. Other bits just to round off, I just want to thank our panelists again for all of the insights today and to everyone for attending. If you guys want to have a look at any of our other masterclasses, these are all on our events page. I really recommend signing up to some more because they're really useful. And we're really looking forward to seeing you next time. So thank you so much, everyone, and goodbye.